Okay. So hello, monsters, and welcome to the Horror Files. I am your host, Dead Alive Dana, and on this podcast, I dive into a particular horror movie, each episode providing insights and reviews as well as the latest in horror movie news. And this is a very special episode of the Horror Files because it is my 100th episode, and I honestly can't believe it. I started this during the pandemic, as a lot of people did. So, and I'm still here. So thank you guys so much for all your support of this podcast. I'm so grateful. And I can think of no better way to celebrate than with my two special guests, Wayne Parkin from his Zorba the Geek movie review account on Instagram, which is fabulous. As well as Rich Harris, who you may know from the MIDSOMMAR and the Blood Rage episodes, as well as from his own Slash in the Attic reviews on Instagram. Welcome, guys.
Oh, hi.
Hi there.
Great
Thanks
to have you guys on. Yeah.
We're getting some British understatement. For it's quite a milestone. 100 episodes, and we're just there like, you know. Yeah. How you doing?
I know I'm going completely across the pond for this episode, which I'm very happy for, actually. So what we're going to do is we're going to do something a little bit different than my normal episodes. So each of us thought of 5 horror-related questions and topics each. And I've entered them into our Wheels of Horror. So what I'm going to do is randomly draw from each of the batch of questions that we provided, and we'll see what we get. Sound good?
Sounds awesome.
Okay. So
I think it's all right because we planned this like weeks ago, so it's fine. Silly.
We've already agreed, so it's good.
Yeah, why would I turn up now and go like, oh, I wasn't
expecting what I signed
this.
up for.
Yeah.
What is this?
It's just
all
for the
going to
folks
do
at home.
equations for this episode, so that's the curve. So I'm going to start in, let's start in reverse alphabetical order. So we're going to start with you, Wayne. So let me share my screen here. We're going to get up the Wayne wheel.
The Wayne wheel.
The Wayne
wheel of Wayne.
That's it. Sounds good. It's like the wheel of misfortune.
Yeah.
All right. So let's go ahead. I'm going to spin and get our first jumping off point. So let's see here.
Watch it spin.
Oh, all right. So the question is, episode 100 coincides with the 50th anniversary year of Jaws. And if we all agree that Jaws should never be remade, do we? What other classic horror movies should also be saved from the remake treatment? Good question. Do you want to start, Wayne?
Well, yeah, I mean, at the risk of, there's a few which I can think of, but Jaws just jumps out to me as being, don't even go there. Don't even try to go there. You can do perfectly good shark films without repeating Jaws. The Shallows, Deep Blue Sea. I think there was a couple of, I can't remember what the one was called, but it was quite gritty. So don't do Jaws. That's rule number 1. The ones which then come to my mind are things which pretty much are of the time. One of my favourite horror films is Possession. Helped in no small amount by that almost Cold War Berlin, of a time era. And I'm thinking it's a great film. Part of it was where it was based and the sense around it. Don't try and replicate that. It's not going to work.
Yeah. I did hear that they are possibly doing a Possession.
Oh, God.
So, I don't know if that's going to come to fruition, but yeah, I did.
Yeah, that's not good news to hear. Don't Look Now. I can't imagine them doing a good remake of Don't Look Now, because without giving away the ending for anybody involved, it's moving film, but it's also quite out there. I don't think you could capture Nicholas Roeg's aesthetic. But then you've got that ending, which is probably the scariest ending I've ever seen in a film at the time when I first saw that. And you know that ending will become the whole thing, not just the ending. They would just mess with it. Right. Videodrome's another one what comes to mind, primarily because we're living it right now. Yeah, it was quite prophetic, and I don't think there's anything you can say now which would have the effect of that then, because we're pretty much living through that multimedia takes over and influences everything we do landscape at the moment. So there are a few of mine. There's a couple of us, but I thought I'd leave it open to you guys.
How about you, Rich?
I've been racking my brain about this. First off, I want to say to Wayne, I think it's incredibly offensive that you didn't say The Meg in your list of good shark movies.
Oh my God! I mean, you can't. Jason Statham. What can I say? I didn't mind the first one. The first one, but the second one absolutely offended me on every level.
Why? Why was that? Because when I saw it, and I so rarely go to the cinema, I actually went to see this one because I thought The Meg was a lot of fun. It is what it is. And there were elements of The Meg 2 that I thought, do you know what? This is dragging a little bit. This hasn't quite got the cohesion of the first one. But I think it was Ben Wheatley that directed it, wasn't it?
Which horrified me even more.
But there were. It's almost like, remember, there's a part right at the end or towards the end during like the denouement, the denouement of The Meg, where there's the camera from inside the shark's mouth.
Yes,
and I thought, that's fucking great. Why wasn't there more of that in this?
And that's my problem.
Yeah, so like your issue with it is that it didn't lean into allowing Ben Wheatley to sort of put his personal stamp on it.
Well, Ben Wheatley's a complete freak. You know, he is absolutely one of a kind, and he's got his own thing going on there.
Yeah.
And then I saw the marketing and thought, it's going to attack a beach full of all these people. This is going to be amazing.
Yeah.
That beach scene lasted about 5 minutes and was bloodless and was just, so that's why I was a little bit offended by it. I went with my brother. Yeah. We both had a few beers before it. We were up for this, trust me.
You were Larry.
You know, and we both came out going, oh God, you know. So that was a Meg.
I suppose, I'd be interested to know whether or not there was some studio interference with that, because like you say, Ben Wheatley has got a very, very unique voice or a unique way of doing his movies. Absolutely. And that was sort of gutted a little bit, maybe. So I'd be interested to know if there was fuckery occurring with that one. But back to the question at hand. I can't necessarily think off the top of my head one that shouldn't be remade, that should be. I mean, there are, but I would think about ones that have been remade that have fundamentally bothered me to my very core. And as I very recently put online, which you very kindly agreed with, Fede Alvarez's Evil Dead remake is the most soulless, vapid, unoriginal, uninspired piece of shit that I've ever seen. And I do not understand why people go like, oh yeah, this is top tier remake. Like, it hasn't got any of the character of the original. Like, when you think about the enormity of talent that Sam Raimi had at the age of 19, made that movie. Like, that's just incredible to think about. And then they give it to a talentless hack like Alvarez. And it's just, it's just absolutely devoid of everything that made Evil Dead stand out completely. And I do not understand and do not tolerate and do not abide by the arguments of anyone that says that it's top tier remake territory, because it's garbage.
Yeah.
It's I don't know, but so I would say like stuff that has been remade that shouldn't have been remade. There's things like, who would have thought that RoboCop was touchable? What's the point? So
12 certificates in the UK at that.
Yeah.
Which totally nullified any of the even the more adult satire of it, but the violence, everything what made RoboCop what it was completely and utterly nullified, by a family-friendly remake.
Yeah, completely.
Well, I think it's funny because both of those examples, Evil Dead and also RoboCop, the remakes, I feel like were missing that tone that I think those two had, the sort of the vibe that they kind of had and what they were kind of going for. Yeah, it's sort of like that was kind of stripped away from those remakes, and I think the heart, actually, it felt like the heart was kind of those two movies was kind of taken away from that.
Yeah,
and I think that's the risk that you take when you try and do a remake, is because you can match everything, shot for shot, everything that this director did. But it's when you lose the spirit of the director and of that particular vision, then I think that's where it loses it.
Mm-hmm. Completely
sometimes agree. Yeah, so sometimes it's the ingenuity involved as well. It's there's an element of say, like, just with Evil Dead, bunch of friends like 19, 20 years of age making this low budget horror movie out in Tennessee in this dilapidated shack, and the suffrage that they all went through because of their belief in Sam Raimi and their belief in the project and their belief in one another. When you think about that on top of how wonderfully creative and different it is. So I rewatched it recently, and I was trying to take myself out of it to watch how it was made and how it's presented. And just that, still one of my absolute favorite parts of that movie is one that I think, why would anyone think to do that, where there's the bird's eye view top down over Bruce Campbell, Ash is on his own, and as the camera passes by the beams in the ceiling and it makes a noise as they pass by, it's just it's wonderful. And it's like there's no real reason that you would think in the first place to put that there. Like, if you're just trying to make this movie, but then go into those lengths to say, no, I want this little bit of this little oddity right there, like to kind of accent everything else. It's just it's an amazing piece of filmmaking just for those little subtleties.
Yeah.
It's discombobulating as well, right?
Yeah.
A lot of films at the time where you were watching it through a certain gaze or a certain, you but all of a sudden that was his way of saying, normal rules don't apply here. I'm going to put the camera where I want. It's going to be in really wicked places. And the discombobulating feeling of that works so damn well.
Yeah. It's incredible. So it's things like, I would probably therefore say that anything that, it's not necessarily whether something is well made, it's just how, I'm trying to think of how to articulate this. That there are some things that it's a very curious question, and it's interesting that you brought up possession as well, because of like losing the Cold War, Berlin Wall kind of feel to it. But then you have the Suspiria remake,
yes,
which I really liked.
I love it.
Yeah.
And you'd have thought, I guess, watching Argento's original, like, you can't remake this. This is very much of its time. It's very much of like a singular vision of a very singular director. But the remake is wonderful.
Yeah.
It doesn't take anything away from the original at all.
No.
You can watch both quite comfortably.
But it's a rare example, right? It's a rare example where you can watch both the original and the remake as two separate visions and think, you know what, they're both great. I can enjoy both of these for very different reasons.
Yeah. No, I agree. So I'm just wondering whether, even though I can't necessarily think of something that you can't remake, because I think that machine is so relentless and creativity sapping and merciless with what it selects, that you really can't reasonably say that anything is off the table, just on the basis of like how Hollywood operates with it. But there are things that have been remade that shouldn't have been remade, not for any elitist reasons other than this is perfect. And unless you are bringing something new to the table, a la the Suspiria remake, you really shouldn't bother.
I mean, you could argue the Wicker Man brought the bees. I mean, that was new. That was definitely not in the first Wicker Man. And you know what? My hatred of that
remake. Sure? Are you sure it wasn't?
No,
it was not.
I'm very, very, very happy with that final scene, just for the laughs.
Perhaps I'm some sort of freak then, because I'm happy for something to be there, and even though I can look at it like, do you know, this isn't very good, I could say about something like that, do you know what? At least they tried something different.
They did try,
yeah.
And does that have any merit? Who knows? That's another question for another time. That's a J.J. Abrams mystery box. So I hope I've answered your questions all right. And I was just wondering what the salary was like.
Yeah.
Well,
what do you think? What do you think, Dee?
You know, it is an interesting question, because I think that Suspiria example is a really good one of how you can kind of keep the sort of essence of that original story and what it was trying to go for, and reinterpret it and in a way that is quite beautiful and compelling and grotesque in different ways than the first one was, because it goes away from that, you know, super saturated color grading, and it goes in the opposite direction, where it's very like bleached out, muted, and but I feel like that one was able to kind of successfully invest us more in the characters than the first one was.
Completely.
Which I really liked. It was, I think that those were more fleshed out and, you know, compelling. And, but as far as remakes go, again, I'm kind of like, I'm in two minds about it, because I feel like Suspiria and maybe a handful of other ones are that rare exception to doing a remake. And I think it's down to really, you know, the director, the script, all of that kind of stuff really just has to work. I'm a little bit cynical of remakes, because again, I feel like it's making a copy of a copy sometimes. So you're kind of losing it on the next pass more and more. I'm not precious about things being remade. I think a lot of people are. You know, they're like, you can't remake that, and blah blah. You know, because I get it. There's a lot of people hold these movies very dear to their hearts. They have a lot of meaning. They have a lot of nostalgia for people. But I'm open to them. But the problem is that we've kind of had more times than not remakes really not be as successful as the originals artistically.
Yeah, I mean, I think the open-mindedness of it, I think it's probably the cynicism might be, is a reflection of the times we live in. So let's not forget, I think all three of us will, unless I don't know it any better, I think we can all agree that one of the greatest horror films is The Thing. And that itself is a remake. Yeah. Sure. Now, that was on my list of films never to be remade again.
Right.
Ironic,
which they
really.
did.
They did the
and
prequel.
It was terrible.
It was. But again, like prequels can be, I was so surprised, pleasantly, with The First Omen last year. I was pleasantly surprised by The First Omen. So I think there's stuff you can do with the IP. I've just got to that cynical point now of this is a money grab a lot of the time, as opposed to an artistic expansion or an artistic, let's improve upon this. This is we know people remember this.
Right.
So we think there's some money on the table out there.
Right.
And that's not the right approach, albeit it's business.
Yeah. All right. Yeah. Well, let's go to our next batch of questions, and we're going to do Rich's questions for this one. So let's do...
Strap in.
Here we go.
The rotation of Rich. If it was the wheel of Wayne, the rotation of Rich.
The rotation of Rich. All right, here we go.
That's got to be like a some sort of Eastern European or French film.
Well, if it wasn't, it's going to be now. I'm going to copyright that.
All right. So we have Blumhouse Horror. Your take.
Right. So we're starting with me.
Yes.
Because it's my question.
Yes.
Yeah. Makes sense, doesn't it? Right. Yeah. Blumhouse Horror. This might be a really naive way of thinking about it, but it sometimes seems like Jason Blum is quite an oddity because his business model is brilliant.
Mm.
Yeah. Can I make this for this little money? Because horror is roundly profitable.
Yeah.
It very, very rarely fails at the box office to generate something for whatever reason. Going back to like the old like drive-in movies from the 50s and stuff, it's just like horror movies or atomic horror movies. They're just like they appeal to a kind of morbid voyeurism. And that's why they're always popular. But so Jason Blum's business model of can I make this cheaply and can it turn a profit is great. And it's also great because he doesn't, as far as I'm aware, interfere with the making of the movies. If someone comes along to make a movie for Blumhouse, he just says, great, how much money do you need? I need this many million. Cool. Let me know when it's done. And that might be a really, really oversimplified version of it, but he doesn't interfere with stuff. And that's great. Even though he's got money invested in it, he doesn't bother the director. Leave them to do what they want. For saying that, though, you get for every The Invisible Man or for every Halloween 2018, you get I don't think this was by Blumhouse, but it's of the same thing. You get a tarot or some other garbage.
I was just thinking a tarot.
Yeah, you get. I mean, Blumhouse did Trap, didn't they? Did he put money into Trap?
I'm not sure if he did.
He's given Shyamalan some money recently, hasn't he? For some stuff. There's been.
I know Split was a Blumhouse, wasn't it?
See, Split was good.
It was.
I liked Split. Glass was a fucking abomination. but Split was good. So for every decent movie on Blumhouse's docket, there is an equal amount, if not more, garbage in that particular buffet. So my take on it really is like, it doesn't, if I see that it's a Blumhouse movie, it doesn't fill me with dread. I just think, oh, okay, I know what I'm getting with like A24 or Neon or something like that. And it can be very good, or it can be pretentious shite. But with Blumhouse, I always know it's going to be something. It's quite exciting when it's a Blumhouse movie. You know, is this going to be cheap? Yeah, is this going to be cheap, or is it going to be pretty effective for what they do?
Right.
Yeah, that's what I think. What's the salary like?
It's your catchphrase for this episode. Yeah. Very good.
Who's going next?
For me, I mean, it's tough because I think, Blumhouse has kind of set themselves up as sort of the, I don't want to get in trouble for this comparison at all, but this sort of American equivalent to, Hammer.
No, I get that.
Yeah. It's.
I think that's fair.
It's sort of, we are the go-to for, horror films for the US. And it's interesting because I'm fascinated at the range of Blumhouse films, good to bad.
Yeah.
And, because they've done stuff that I've really enjoyed. They did, Creep is one. They did the 2018 Halloween, but then they also did Halloween Kills, and then they also did, some really not great stuff. I think there was like that Fantasy Island film.
Oh yeah,
they did.
Yeah,
I just horrible stuff. But then they also did like Cam, which came out a couple of years ago and was great.
Yeah.
So it's curious as to what they sort of take on. And I think that's interesting with, the not quite, they don't hover, I guess, over their directors and stuff like that, which is good. But then I also think about, well, maybe you should have, with some of the films. It's like, I don't know. It's kind of interesting because they can do things that are very silly. And I think of like, I think Megan was one that they actually did. That's very camp. And then they'll do Martyrs. Well, they did do the US Martyrs, but I think that I'm always wary of a conglomerate. I think that, they can kind of push more indie directors into the spotlight, which is good. But then it also is just kind of like, there's some stuff where I'm just kind of like, where was quality control in all of this?
Yeah.
When you're looking at the dailies and seeing this, like, what is your thought process?
Jason Blum's too busy counting money.
Oh, really?
He's too busy like thumbing through bennies. Yeah,
it's hugely successful. And I'm curious also as to like maybe how some of these films more down the line may change with viewing, like may become more cultish, or I think of like Hammer horror films and stuff, and sort of like what that's sort of become in the years since, and even some of like the not great Hammer stuff. And I'm curious as to like what Blumhouse Films will maybe kind of do that.
I fear which ones will be future cult classics.
I do too.
There's one which comes to mind, which is one of the worst films I've seen of the last few years, which it's got cult classic written all over it, and that's Dashcam. Which
Jesus,
for the love of God, I just can't. I came out of that in such an angry mood. So when they hit, they do hit, and I don't know. Me and Rich didn't share our question, just so you know, but I suspected Blumhouse would rear its head at some point during this conversation. So I did a little credit and debit account, which is, okay, do I really think they suck as much as I do, or is it just purely that their recent output has swayed me in a certain way? And there are quite a lot. In fact, there's a load in the middle, but there's some which I really think are great. Like Get Out was a Blumhouse. Halloween 2018, Insidious, Sinister. These are really, really good films. Black Film. But God, when they stink out. They stink out the joint. And Dashcam is public enemy number one. they give with one hand and take with the other. Like The Invisible Man was brilliant, and then they did The Wolfman this year, which I don't know whether you've seen it, but I came out of that thinking, what was it trying? I don't even know what it was trying to do. It wasn't scary, it wasn't good, and then they also keep on leaning into gimmicky stuff. I think two of the films last year were pure gimmicks, which was Imaginary with the teddy bear.
Oh yeah.
And Afraid with capitalized AI in the middle. And they were just lame movies with somebody had an idea, and back to our quality control. Just because you have an idea, it's almost that Jeff Goldblum Jurassic Park thing. Doesn't mean, just because you could doesn't mean you should. You have to think about characters, you have to think about a story, a compelling narrative. And you know what? Have a few scares in there because it's supposed to be a horror film, right? Let's throw a couple of scares in there. Completely bereft, those two films were of that.
We've let the raptors out and they're in the kitchen.
Absolutely. And let's not forget, for all the credits on the left-hand side, they did fucking Exorcist Believer, and I will never forgive them for that, ever.
Yeah, I agree.
Exorcist Believer, I was making some notes on that, if you remember, Dee, because you talked about it on one of your shows, didn't you?
Yeah, I did.
And I made some notes for it, and I think it was I don't have them to hand, but was it something like for 43 minutes? It's actually pretty decent. It's okay, it's passable because it's building up what's going to happen.
Yeah.
It's something. It's like a really arbitrary figure, like 47 minutes or 43 minutes or something, and you can watch it and think, all right, okay, I'm curious where this is going, and then it just falls off a cliff.
Yeah.
So I mean, you're right. I can't disagree with you. It is atrocious. It's fucking terrible. It's a really, really bad film. But just going back to a point where you say that there's this quality control. I remember reading an interview at one point with George Clooney, who said that his method for picking scripts, for picking films, was I do one for the studio and then I do one for me. So it's like he'll do some garbage for the studio because it pays well, and then that puts the money in his pocket to go and do something else, a little indie project or something where he could say, yeah, I don't need my full salary for this, or do you know what, I don't need any salary for this. I'll help out, I'll produce, I'll put my money into it because I believe in the film. And I get that sensation sometimes from Blumhouse, where there is some shit that will pass muster and it will make money at the box office, and then that gives the studio or the directors, the writers, the opportunity to make something that is a little bit more, not experimental, but just a little bit different. because you're right, Wayne, the Wolfman was crap. It really was, because it didn't lean into its concepts enough.
No.
When Lee Wannell was talking about, he took a lot of inspiration from The Fly, that you were going through this transformative, this really painful and distressing transformative moment with the lead. And I thought, yeah, do you know what? That's quite, that always hits me. I always feel like I've got the flu or something when I'm watching The Fly. I always feel ill, and not just physically sick because it's fucking gross, but I just feel like it's so well done that you can feel that loneliness of going through such a distressing illness alone. But that just wasn't there with the Wolfman. There was nothing there. It was really, really bland. But in much the same way as, like, at least it tried something different. I came away from the Wolfman disappointed that it was another not great werewolf movie out there. But also thinking, like, do you know what? No one else would have given Lee Wannell this shot. No other studio would have given him this shot. Yeah, it was a miss, but okay, fine. Try harder next time.
Yeah.
That's as much as I can say about the Wolfman. But I like, that's what I mean about the business model. I like that sometimes it's like, right, this is one for the box office and this is one for the artist.
Yeah. Yeah.
And even though Jason Blum has some, I remember when we were doing Midsommar, there was the quotation from Jason Blum about cerebral horror.
Oh yeah.
Even though that's a little bit of a, even though that's a little bit of a short-sighted way of thinking about it. I do think there's something there in him that says, yeah, this is shit, but it will make money. Right. And this means that I can fund this that is actually decent.
It's going to keep the lights on, essentially, you know.
Yeah. And then
we can, we can go for the project that is more of a risk, so to speak.
Look at Split, like you brought up, Wayne. Like Shyamalan's credit was bad at that point, and deservedly so. But then he had this idea, and Jason Blum obviously latched onto the fact of, okay, this is interesting. This is a little bit different. It's got a Unbreakable-esque twist to it, which, you know, is the fact that it's in alongside Unbreakable. But it was, I don't think any other studio would have given him the time of day for that.
Yeah.
No. Agreed.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's go on to
Thanks,
the next
everyone.
Question.
That's a good question. Yeah. What's next? The Dial of Dana?
The Dial of Dana is next.
These are really good.
We've got these now.
You're fucking wasted, you are. What you're doing, you're fucking wasted.
I'm not wasted. It's too early in the day.
Favorite horror kill and why?
Oh, nice. Wow. Now we're talking, huh? Oh, my God.
Go on, D, lay it on us.
Oh, God. Question. Now I got to think, it's horrible because I did my questions and honestly did not think about them.
Neither did I.
I love that you always take note. Do you know what? We went to see, what were you taking notes on when we went to see? We saw Barbarian, didn't we? We saw Barbarian and Blackula.
No, it was Barbie.
Barbie? Oh, yeah. We did Barbenheimer.
It was Barbarian, because I was doing the reviews back then.
Yeah. And you had the, I didn't think those people existed that had like a little torch, and they'd write, they'd write little notes while they were watching the film. And I just thought, that's fascinating. I don't do that. I leave it all up here, and then I make like broad sweeping statements about the film afterwards, and then people will say that didn't happen. And I'm like, oh well, maybe I conflated it or whatever. Who cares? But it is, I love it. I love that you take notes. It's great.
The only issue I'll take with there is that I didn't have a torch because I'd be terrified of getting told off, because I tell other people off in cinemas with so I scribble all over the pad, and you should see the god awful state. But my writing's terrible anyway. You should see the 10 pages where I've scrolled like some horrible kidnap note, you know.
I bought, you know, for people
the day after.
You know, for people that are getting on my nerves in movie theaters, I bought from it was a seaside trip. You can get them from like pound shops and stuff. You know, like the little bangers, the little poppers.
Oh yeah.
I bought those, like the little twisted. It's like, I don't know what's in it, like grit or whatever. For some reason, it bangs. And I'm like, this is like, what fucking dark alchemy is this? But I got these little bangers, and like I've not been brave enough to do it yet. I've got to admit, but next time we go to see something, there's a chance that I might bring my box of bangers. But then again, we've seen these things at like these independent chains, and people tend to want to see the film at independent chains. They don't really say much, you know. But I've got these like ready to go that I could just
Oh, this is going to be carnage. I can't wait.
What was the question?
Favorite horror kill and why?
Oh, yeah, go for it.
Okay. So I think actually, well, favorite, I guess. It's kind of an interesting question, and I wrote it. So my mind actually went to Hereditary. I love that film as it is overall. I think it's incredible. And I think it's because now it's sort of like become this, very much a meme and all of that. But when I actually saw it in the theater the first time, like when it came out, I was absolutely shocked, of course, when an unmovable object meets an unstoppable force. I mean, I gasped because it was just so absolutely unexpected, so absolutely horrific.
Yeah.
And I think that I was curious also about the decision because of not showing it, but you hear the sounds, you understand what's happened. And then I'm curious because I think that that Astor could have left it there, but he went back and actually gave us the gore shot. He gave us the after. And I which is effective. I don't think I think that it actually is just like, it makes it even more horrific. So I don't know. I just started thinking about that particular kill and also how it was done in the film, where, it could have easily been left to the imagination, but I think also he does that enough, I think, in that film. Those leaves things for the audience to kind of like let sink in and let the natural, horror of that situation kind of go in their minds. But then also you get in Hereditary these absolutely shocking, visceral moments. And it's just, I love that because it's just so amazingly balanced in that way. So I think, for all the jokes and stuff that have been, kind of made about that scene.
Since,
I still remember, seeing it in the theater and it just absolutely being flabbergasted by it.
And also, and we're not going to give it away just in case nobody's seen it, but the genius of marketing in this case, which added to the rug being pulled from under the feet. So if you think of the poster and you think of the trailers, it was focused around.
Yeah. No, you're right. Actually, I'd never even. I don't recall. I'd like Hereditary just sort of like dropped on my doorstep. I'd heard things about it, but I hadn't seen trailers or posters or anything. I try and make a habit of not actually doing that because I made that mistake with Predators, and I'll forever be angry about that. All the red dots appear on Adrian Brody.
That does happen in the film, doesn't
it? That scene does, but there's like 3 sets of dogs. But then in the trailer, there's fucking loads, and it's like, oh my god, predators!
Yeah.
But no, it was a lie.
Yeah.
So yeah, no, you're quite right that there is no hint given that is the catalyst for what occurs.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I mean, I know that's kind of silly to say in a way, but it's so much more than what it is on the surface. You know. Yeah, good choice. I like that.
Really good choice. Who's next?
Go on, you go.
Okay, I got one. I'll take you back to 1986, 10-year-old. At a time when we had video shops, independent video shops, it was even before Blockbuster. And they were quite liberal in the way they did things. Typically the one on a Sunday afternoon where I'd gone to my nan's for Sunday lunch, and there's an independent video shop there run by a complete stoner who really did not give a shit. And I went in on a Sunday afternoon and watched in the store all afternoon Wes Craven's Deadly Friend.
Oh, yeah.
And one word, basketball. It is absolutely sublime.
It's wild, yeah.
That is just one of the most fun deaths I've ever seen, which you could never have really seen coming, despite the fact that it's quite a fun film. It's one of those 80s fun films. It's not dissimilar to something what I'd expect Blumhouse to come out with now. If you think about the plot and you think about everything, it wouldn't be as much fun. But that death, watching 10 years old, I watched the whole film. Should have scarred me for life. It didn't. I came out with a gleeful grin on my face. And my nan asked if I'd had a good time. I was like, oh, yeah. So that's my one.
How about you, Rich?
Sometimes I think about a horror film death in terms of creativity. And then there's also deservedness. Is that right?
Interesting.
Yeah. So it tends to be that some of the best deaths are some of the most fun, and the most fun are slashers. And the further you get into the late 80s and early 90s, the more that because you take a look at like the Friday the 13th movies, and they are a reasonably bloodless affair. Like the early ones, they are reasonably bloodless. Stuff happens off screen, or it cuts as soon as like the knife or whatever is about to be plunged in. And I can only really attribute that to like, these movies are shit, but they make money. So it's probably going to be a case of we can get teens in for this, and we want to get it past the censors. But the cinematic masterpiece that is Jason X.
I know the one. I know where you're going.
The cryogenic face slam. What a fucking death. And then even though it's kind of a repeat of one that happens in, is it 6 or 7? The sleeping bags.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
7, I believe.
Yeah, I think you're right. And no, that's just fun. That is fun that it cuts to that, and it's like, oh wow, I don't know why I didn't expect that, but it just happened. But yeah, the cryogenically frozen face slam is wonderfully creative, and it's sort of unexpected again, and it's just perfect. It's just a brilliant death. But that character doesn't deserve that, and who does deserve the death that they get? Like the really sort of that it lingers on it is John Strode in Halloween 6, The Curse of Michael Myers. That utter piece of shit that throughout, he's a drunk, he's mean to his wife, he's mean to his daughter, he's mean to his grandchild. He's clearly a Trump supporter. He is an absolute garbage human being. And then in well, it's not a director's cut, is it? Is it what was the one that it was like a producer's cut, wasn't it? That had like the alternative ending and all that sort of thing. It lingers on John Strode's death in the basement of the house where he gets electrocuted and then his head explodes. And that is like, all that build up with John Strode is like, man, you are a fucking piece of shit. And then that is a real, like, what a hero Michael Myers really is in that. So yeah, that's my favorite deserved death. And probably my favorite creative kill is from the cinematic masterpiece, Jason X. Thank you.
Great choices.
I think that was on the actual poster, cinematic masterpiece.
It should be.
Yeah.
Well, I have double dipped because I got the Shout the Shout Factory box set, or the Scream Factory box set, when that came out a couple of years ago, and now Arrow are releasing that 4K set along with Jason Goes to Hell, and I've pre-ordered them both. I'm not even fucking ashamed.
Even Jason Goes to Hell.
Yeah, man.
Okay.
That is another, like, it's shit, but at that stage in because that was like New Line's first Friday the 13th movie after they'd acquired the rights. Like, the director's like a 20-year-old kid, and it's so odd in the pantheon of the rest of the Friday the 13th movies. It like introduces it. It's barely a reboot. It's something. I find it so fascinating, morbidly fascinating, like a car crash. I find it really interesting. Yeah, and I mean, but again, that was like they went heavy on the gore because like the of all the issues that Jason Goes to Hell has got, the special effects makeup is really not one of them. It's got some wonderfully gooey and creative deaths in that. I just find it fascinating. It's like, think of Jason X as like, oh yeah, I'm going to stick this on because it's fun, and think of Jason Goes to Hell as, I'm going to put this on in the lab and I'm just going to analyze it and I'm going to look at it so I can warn future generations.
Yeah.
Not ashamed. I'm not. You can think what you fucking like. I'm not ashamed.
It has got that killer tease at the end, which eventually came good.
Yeah, which is also a cinematic masterpiece.
I did, yeah.
I'm not. Right. You can argue it. No, hang on a minute. Right, we've not finished this argument. You can think what you want. I don't care. I don't care what you think.
All
Next
right.
question. Come on, let's get on with it.
Let's move back to Wayne's questions. Let's see here.
The proper questions. Well, yours are proper as well, but like, it's like yours are the proper one. Like the Blumhouse one was just kind of like, oh yeah, all right. But then there's some really fucking strange ones on there from me.
All right, let's see what we get next. Ooh. Oh, what do we think was the best era/decade for horror?
You've got his physics revision notes out.
I mean, I'll just cut to the chase. It's the 80s, right?
Yeah, it is.
And my arguments are pretty much on a few levels. I mean, you could say this is a nostalgia thing, that we grew up and it was all very exciting when you were younger, coming into horror. But it was such a wealth. There was this buffet of options. You got your serious horrors. We've mentioned a few already. We've mentioned Possession. We've got things like Angel Heart, movies like that. But then you've got this complete, unhinged variety of fun horrors. Stuff like Society, Reanimator, Return of the Living Dead, those kind of things. But the beauty of it was, and I guess there's options out there now with streaming and likes of Shudder, but I got a real kick out of the direct-to-video stuff. I got a real kick out of renting a film and then seeing all these obscure, weird horror movies like Ghoulies like Fall. Well, pretty much everything Empire, Empire Pictures, everything, those kind of things. But then things like, I think it's called The Curse 2, The Bite in America. But it was just called The Bite here, where this guy gets bit by a snake and goes in that The Fly slow transformation thing. But the joy of basically seeing all these options. But you've got these great horror directors as well who are really, coming at the peak of their powers. You got Wes Craven, David Cronenberg, John Carpenter. We had Romero at the time, who I know probably his two best films were before the 80s, but you got Day of the Dead, and then things he was doing with Stephen King, with Creepshow and all that. And I just think the freestyle jazzing approach to horror back in that era was exciting to be a part of. You also had the Forbidden Zone, which was the video nasty era here in the UK, which, when I was younger, it gave this almost ominous tone to a lot of these things. It was the most ridiculous act ever, done by Mary Whitehouse, who is pretty much an even more sinister version of Dolores Umbridge from Harry Potter, who was just thinking, this shit is fun, I'm not letting you get hold of it.
Yeah.
But like all good laws where you ban material or you ban art, all it does is strengthen that art and makes it more powerful than the law which tried to stop it in the first place. So eventually all these films were available again. And I'd said it were a lot more successful and a lot bigger because of that. So that's my impassioned argument for the 80s. Plus the fact that I could go in a video store and watch Deadly Friend aged 10.
Right.
You could not do that now.
No, I agree. I would also probably say 80s as well. It was, it did feel like this sort of like Wild West kind of time for horror films and for what you could kind of do with it. And I think it's really like I think the 80s is where it really hits its zenith of like, the ideas were crazy. Some were crazy, some were brilliant. You also had the practical effects were getting better and better.
Yeah.
Because there were, some great effects in the 70s and late 70s. And I feel like in the 80s, it was really kind of hitting its stride with like, how crazy, wild, detailed we can kind of go.
Yeah.
And then, it was kind of an interesting time because I remember in the 80s and going to like my first kind of sleepover and just these girls who were all way too young to watch this movie and putting on Pet Sematary.
Wow.
And which actually like scared me. But then I was also kind of like, after that, it was just sort of like, wow, this is really, I've never seen anything like this. And it was scary, but it was also like thrilling and, sad and also emotional. And, so I realized probably a lot of the decision making with some of these films was, a little bit of the nose candy happening in Hollywood around that time.
What are you talking about? What do you mean? Maximum Overdrive was made completely sober.
Yeah, right.
That's a pure guilty
King
pleasure.
Was sober as a church mouse when he made that. Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's kind of like, so I love we kind of had like, there was a little bit of danger and unhingedness to some of these films that were being made and that you could never replicate again.
Yeah.
I mean, even just like, you look at something like, we were talking about remakes and like, if you should do them or how you should do them. And I look at something like Sleepaway Camp, and I'm like, they'll never remake that movie. Not in that way, because you can't.
No.
You can't now.
No,
and it's just the kids are swearing like sailors, and they're like very young kids. You have the issue of, gender identity and trans issues, and you also have like pedophiles that are, it's crazy. It's like taking like the most kind of things, and it puts it all into kind of one movie, and it will never be done again. But I think that's why I think the 80s is the best time for horror, because it really broke, like it had all the taboos, and it made it a very interesting time to be a horror lover.
Yeah. The lunatics had taken over the asylum.
Yeah.
In a good way.
Yeah. I can't add anything to that other than the preceding decades crawled so that the 80s could run. Like Tom Savini crawled so that Greg Nicotero could run. And that those things have their place even now, or more recently. I mean, it's like, Jesus, we're heading towards 20 years since this, but saying things like Planet Terror, watching the featurettes on the special effects makeup for that, for the melting zombie men, they didn't just apply gore to it. It's this Savini-esque, this is what I saw in Vietnam.
Yeah.
And this is what bodies actually look like. And then I remember watching this little featurette on them making the actual layers of tissue for these moments that were going to be on camera for like less than a second or less than 2 seconds, as like someone pulls melting flesh from the face. You can see the sinew and all this sort of thing, because that's what it looks like, or at least as far as they can guess. And I just think those sorts of things are wonderful, and they lay the groundwork for everything else that came. But yeah, I really cannot argue that the 80s was not a great time. You got these directors that had come through from watching like drive-in movies from the 50s and 60s. So like The Thing from Another World is like a drive-in. I like it, but it's a drive-in movie. Invaders from Mars. I mean, the remake is shit, but it's like, again, it's just these things obviously sparked these directors' imaginations, and they could take them and run with them and do something more without the limitations of budget and the effects of the time. And The Blob, these are all like great remakes, because the Blob, the original Blob, is boring as fuck. It really is. There's some interesting bits in it, but it's really, really boring. The most entertaining thing in the original Blob is looking at Steve McQueen and thinking, you're not a teenager, are you?
Yeah.
But all of these things that were then remade in the 80s of like, right, this is what we can do. This is how it should be done properly. And you're never going to improve upon that.
I think you're right. And I think when we rightfully, over a period of years, we've got cynical about remakes, but the 80s was peak remake. You've got The Thing, The Fly, The Blob, there'll be others. Where I thought these are all at least as good, if not better, than the original films. And that's what they should be striving for. And to your point, what you just said, they're thinking this is what we can do with it. Not driven by money, it's driven by creative decision.
Yeah. And I mean, you even look at stuff that's like, they are original IPs, but they are very, very entrenched in drive-in movie lore, I suppose. Critters, Gremlins,
Creeps.
Night of the Creeps, Killer Clowns from Outer Space. These things are like 100%. These, you could transplant those and take those back to the 50s and maybe rejig them a little bit, and a drive-in crowd wouldn't know the difference. But they were perfect transplants from that area. They were given that upgrade that they needed. But nowadays, you don't, that dilution, as you said before, Dee, about copy of a copy of a copy, it loses something. So you get all of these, and you find it with music as well. The bands and that are influenced by other bands don't create the same music of the same type, because they have just seen the surface level of what the band that they liked have gone through. It's all of these ingredients that make up how good that original band was, and those things don't exist anymore, or at least they don't exist in the same way. So you get directors that look at that and say, like Abrams with was it fucking Super 8? It's like, I really love Spielberg's films and I want to do like a Spielberg film. Like, yeah, I mean, I get it, but this ain't a Spielberg film. It's not, and it loses that edge that a Spielberg film would have had, because it's a dilution of that influence. Whereas the 80s was an improvement on an influence, as it were.
Right.
So yeah, I can't argue with anything that the 80s was the best period, bar none.
All right, we're back to rich questions.
You don't mind if I have some gin, do you?
That's a big glass of gin.
Yeah, well, you know.
All right,
I showed it the tonic water, but it wasn't interested.
Okay, let's see.
Please let it be the Muppet question, please.
Oh, is it
Muppet? Yeah, I think it is.
Yes.
Oh. Yes.
Yes.
All right. So you can remake one of the following movies. The protagonist villain remains the same, but the rest of the cast are replaced by Muppets. Which do you choose? Rob Zombie's Halloween, Midsommar, or Hellraiser?
This is such an easy question.
Is it? You think it? Do you know what? I'm going to defer. Wayne, you go first.
It's got to be Midsommar. I just
right.
Yeah, but the way I think I've just come unstuck is the protagonist villain.
Yeah. There isn't necessarily one, is there?
Yeah, absolutely. But generally, the thoughts of Midsommar remade with. And when I think about Muppets, I'm thinking Sesame Street as well. I can imagine Bert and Ernie being in the mix there. You know, Bert and Ernie straight away.
The Jim Henson Workshop.
When I thought of Midsommar, I love the idea of Bert and Ernie stumbling upon this commune, and how they would deal with that would be absolutely surreal.
Do you know? I've just thought as well, like if you can have anything from the Jim Henson Creature Workshop. I was thinking, I suppose that the villain of Midsommar would be the boyfriend, right?
Yeah.
I guess.
Yeah.
Him at the end, not in a bear suit, but in a Ludo suit.
Oh.
Now I'm thinking I'll miss the Snuffleupagus.
Yeah. Jesus. Yeah, I like the sound of a Midsommar with Muppets now. I don't think I've got a better answer than that. And I came up with a bleeding question.
As well. The Muppets Midsommar. It's like the Muppets Christmas Carol.
It really fits.
Yeah,
I love that. Yeah,
Rob's like, yeah. Sorry, I was just thinking that's alliteration always wins, doesn't it? Well, I really want. I think when I thought about that question, I must have been thinking somewhere that Hellraiser is the only answer that you could have, just because of the juxtaposition of how awful everything is. But then again, who would you say is the main antagonist, or is that like the main? Oh, it's the protagonist. Did I say protagonist or antagonist?
You said protagonist.
Right. Okay. So you can
/ villain.
either or. So
yeah,
with Hellraiser, I suppose it's more difficult because do you just have like, what's the character's name? The lead girl. What's her name? Kirsty.
Yeah.
You either have her as human, and the rest of them are Muppets, like Muppet Cenobites.
What was the one with the goggles? Because I've got Professor Bunsen in that role straight
amazing.
away.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Beaker? Would Beaker be one?
Beaker's got to be a Cenobite.
He's got to be one.
Yeah.
What's that? Julia would be Miss Piggy.
Yes. Absolutely.
Frank. Who could Frank be?
Bert's jumping to mind again.
You got to get past this.
Well, it's that old Bert is Evil thing. Do you know, in the early days of internet, my favorite website was Bert is Evil.
Bert is Evil.
Yeah.
I still like Garfield without Garfield. Yeah. That'd be so. Yeah. I think even though I agree that a Muppet Midsummer is probably going to be the best one. Yeah, I kind of want Hellraiser because I still want it to be exactly the same. Nothing has changed. It's just that Kirsty is still Kirsty and everything else is a Muppet. And I just wild. Think that, I think it would just be so awful to see that of how gooey and grim that is. Like Muppets having like illicit sex, and Frank Muppet's suitcase full of dirty Polaroids of other Muppets in compromising positions.
It's that juxtaposition between, like, you know, you have like this goopy, gory, you know, S&M tinged film, and then you have like the Muppets over on this side, which are just like, you know, of course, so wholesome and and cute and
so I'm gonna go for Hellraiser.
Okay, that's a good one. I do have to go with Midsommar for mine though, because I think the film would absolutely you think of like the Muppet films and like they kind of do like Muppets in Space and they have Muppets Take Manhattan, you know, all that kind of stuff. There was like the pirate one too, right?
Treasure
Island, yeah.
Tim Curry, yeah.
So I feel like this kind of almost thematic location look would like very much suit the Muppet milieu, so to speak. So yeah.
And do you know what I've just thought of? And this is a slam dunk. This is my closing argument as to why that's the right answer. The suicide at the top of a cliff. It's got to be Statler and Waldorf.
Oh my gosh. Yes.
I rest my case.
Yes.
But is it blood at the bottom or is it like stuffing?
Stuffing. It's got to be stuffing. You've got to lean into stuffing.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right, yeah.
But stuffing everywhere.
Do you know what?
All that stuff.
As far as I'm concerned, fuck me. Fuck my choices. You're right. You're absolutely right. I regret coming up with that question, if only because I couldn't think of a winning answer.
No, that was a great question.
All right, we're gonna do. We'll do one more question, one of mine, to close it out. And let's see here. Back to the dial of Dana. Okay.
I was thinking the disc.
The disc of Dana.
The disc of Dana.
All right, let's see what we get. Oh, this is actually a good one. This is a good ending. Ooh. What is horror to you? Why do you enjoy it? What does it do for you?
Good. I can't answer it, but go on.
It's a brilliant question, but we can't answer it.
Yeah. So I guess I'll go. I love horror because I think it's probably the most versatile genre of film, and you can explore so much with it. there's horror that is just, you know, pure fun, entertainment. I'm laughing my ass off. There's horror films where I'm, you know, by the end of it, crying my eyes out because it's so emotional. You know, like anytime I watch Train to Busan, I cry. It's going to happen. Um, and then there's other ones where I'm just like absolutely terrified. I am like, okay, did I lock the door? I don't like having some, you know, I need to put some more lights on kind of stuff where it just extremely unnerves me. And there's some that I've watched that I've regretted watching. But there's been a lot, actually.
Well, I've just listened to your Birdemic. I listened to your Birdemic episode this week.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I love the storytelling that you can do with horror because you can explore so many different themes. And it sounds weird, but, you know, I think horror explores humanity in the best way, the best parts and the worst parts.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you can see the most awful things that humans are capable of, and you can also see them the best and the most brave and the most courageous and the most heroic, and it's a beautiful kind of range that horror has. And you know, I watch horror because I enjoy it. It's fun. Otherwise, I wouldn't want to watch horror movies. If I didn't enjoy horror, I wouldn't watch it. But I think there's so much wonderful emotions that it can sort of bring out in you. And whether it's, you know, things like, you know, sadness or grief or absolute, you know, crazy fun. I think that every time I watch a horror film, I'm an optimist. Even if I have a feeling it's going to be terrible, I'm like, it may be terrible, but it could be a lot of fun. And there's always something in a horror film that I enjoy. It's kind of like with the writing process or the creative writing process, and that I could be reading a terrible story that's not written very well, and it could be by somebody who's a well-known writer, it could be by somebody who's, you know, never written anything before, but I always find something in there, a phrase, a sentence, something that just hits and I love, and that I'm like, there it is right there. That's what I love about it. Mm. So yeah, that's mine.
It's a great answer. Yeah. Rich, do you want to go or should I go? Or
I think I will go because I think the show should end on a sensible answer. And I think that's something that you could provide. Bless you.
Oh wow, no pressure.
No, it's not that my answer is going to be stupid or anything. It's just I was thinking while you were talking, Dee, about like favorite genres and things like that, and I was thinking about how horror kind of bleeds into all of them to an extent. So you get something like Hereditary, that's family drama with horror elements, you know?
Yeah.
There's a lot of science fiction, which is a genre that I adore, that has horror elements to it. Even hard sci-fi, like hard sci-fi concepts like Planet of the Apes. When you get to like beneath the Planet of the Apes, and you get the underground group that worship the atomic bomb, that like the reveal of like their brain and like how mutated they've become and like how sort of bastardized and warped and everything, like the hymns that they're singing have become, that frightens me, because that's horrible. It's a really horrific thing. So I was just thinking about how much horror bleeds into all of these different genres. It's like, as I said to you before, I love Batman, and there are so many horror elements to Batman. Some of the villains, the things that they do, that it's just, there's some like creatures, monsters in it. So I suppose I really don't have any choice but to like horror. I always have. From like a really early age, it's just this fascination. My daughter asks me, she's like, "Daddy, why have you got so many like scary films? Why do you watch this?" And all I can really say to her is like, "It's fun, you know. It's fun. I like it." But it's curious to me how horror can be. So the first time that I went to Universal's Horror Nights, and I was walking around the park itself. We were trying to pick a house to go into, one of the themed houses. This is like the way that horror can be different and elicit different emotions. I saw people coming out of the American Werewolf in London house, and they were laughing and joking, like, "Oh, you fucking shit yourself at that bit, didn't you?" You know, they were having a great time. And then I saw people coming out of the Insidious house. And the Insidious house was all based around the Further.
Right.
And they were coming out very quiet, very ashen faced, and very like, I did not enjoy that experience at all. That was like, that was like they'd been through some shit. But that is kind of like, that's in keeping with the theme of Insidious, whereas American Werewolf, yes, it's got some horrific moments, but it's kind of a comedy horror, so it is going to be more fun. I just don't think I've got any choice. I just think it is, as you said, it's such a wonderfully versatile genre, and even if you are not trying to do something that is horrific, you have got elements of horror in it. Like, some parts of it are just horrific. I do not think of David Lynch as a horror film director, but there are some parts of Fire Walk with Me, Lost Highway, Mulholland Drive,
Eraserhead for sure.
Eraserhead. Yeah. There are bits in there that are horror.
Absolutely.
And they're there to scare. It's just it's everywhere. It's in pretty much every genre, pretty much. So I would say I just don't have a choice. That's why I like it. I always have. I almost don't want to look behind the curtain and find out why I like it. I've maybe already answered it with the Muppet Hellraiser. Like, clearly I'm some sort of sex pervert. Sex killer pervert. I hope I've answered the question for you all right there.
Good answer. Perfect. Yeah.
You're too kind. Go, Wayne, close us out with some sense. Go.
I don't know sense, but I resonate with everything you've both just said, particularly the versatility of it. I think sometimes I have a bit of a downer on horror, just purely because you look back at, to me, it should be a cracked mirror, you know, to measure up the world you live in. And there used to be a lot of that. But now I think actually there is more than we think. You know, there's Get Out, even The Substance Show, films like that. So there's messages, there's good narrative, there's things you can think, okay, I know what they're getting at here. But if I was to really boil it down, I'm still a kid. I'm just a big kid who was the big kid who used to watch films which you really shouldn't have in video stores when he was a kid. If I lived in America, I would have been in the drive-in movies all the time. You know, I still like the feeling that, should I really be watching this? You know, am I prepared for this? You know, this feels a little bit off limits here. Whenever I go to a fun fair, the first thing I'll look for is a ghost train. I like the ghost train. I like it taking me around the corner into the dark, dropping me a little bit, something jumping out, something maybe touching the back of my neck. I like all of that, all those emotions. And in horror, both in reading it, writing it, but also watching it in particular, does all of those. It can make me come out feeling like my world has collapsed. Hello, the mist. You know,
why did you have to bring up the mist?
I know, I'm sorry. But it can also, there's comfort horror. You know, I watch so many like 80s horror films was to a form of comfort. Yeah, bad shit happens. But you know what? It's comfort to me watching these. And then, you know, when good overcomes evil, it's amazing. You know, it's really amazing to see that and see, you know, the final girl or whoever survive at the end and walk off into the sunset. It's a roller coaster. It's a ghost train. I wouldn't have it any other way.
Great answer.
That's what I mean. That's what I mean. You wouldn't have got that out of me.
Oh, we got a whole lot more though, mate.
Well, yeah, maybe, but I mean that in terms of a show, if you just edit everything that I've said out, pick every other word or whatever, then it might work. But no, there was no way that no, that's just beautiful.
Yeah. Well, thank you guys so much for being on here. This was a great discussion, and I can't think of a better way to celebrate 100 episodes. So thank you guys so much.
Congratulations. We look forward to the next 100. You know, it's been a real pleasure. So thank you for having us.
Oh, thank you so much.
Yeah.
All right. I'm going to go ahead and stop recording.